This presentation examines the issue of poverty and introduces you to Dr. Ruby Payne's work that can help you understand students who come from poverty. These faces of poverty tell you that this condition permeates their very marrow. It's not an abstraction. They feel it and live it every day. They wake up with it in their bloodstream. There's no hiding from it. Most importantly, these children did not choose to live in poverty. Additionally, they face numerous obstacles to healthy physical, emotional, and intellectual development. In fact, data from the Infant Health and Development Program show that 40% of children living in chronic poverty had deficiencies in at least 2 areas of functioning by age 3. Last, the dysfunctional neighborhoods and houses where poor children live are more dangerous than middle school environments due to increased crime and violence. Additionally, as these children suffer from inferior housing, health insurance, and child care, as well as the lack of social and educational opportunities, they exist with gigantic personal threats. The number of United States children who live in poverty is staggering, with almost 1 in 5 children living beneath the poverty line, which is $24,447 for a 4-person family. According to U.S. records, child poverty rates peaked in 2013 around 22% and tapered off in 2014 at 22%, and then down to 19.7 in 2015. As you look at the U.S. map, you see that poverty is high in the South and West, but permeates throughout the United States. West Virginia is 24.7% and Ohio is 22.9%. As seen by the chart, African Americans top the list with a 39% poverty rate of children living below the poverty line. American Indians next at 37% and Hispanics 33%, which exceed the national average of 22%, while children living in poverty that are white is 14%. This chart shows that rural children are more prone to poverty, with 27% living there in poverty than urban children with 22% in poverty. The poverty in rural America comes with challenges such as hopelessness, high unemployment, and scarce community resources. Urban poor characterizes another type of poverty with unique issues such as slums, gangs, and illegal drug traffic. The Bronx in New York City leads the nation with 29.1% of its families living in poverty, while Seattle, Washington has the lowest rate of 9.5%. Cleveland and Cincinnati are above the national average, while Pittsburgh is below the national average. As you probably realize, poverty is caused by interrelated factors: parental employment status and earnings, family structure, and parental education. This slide shows that children who live with a single female is the most likely to live in poverty than other groupings. Poverty seen through the eyes of children is a global issue. It is hard to imagine that the United States ranks 5th of the listed countries with our 22% of children living in poverty. Poverty means different things to different people. The poor are impoverished in a way unique, and so there are many different kinds of poverty. The most extreme kind is absolute poverty. With absolute poverty, necessities are scarce, such as food to eat, shelter, or housing without running water. Fortunately, the United States has very little incidence of absolute poverty, unlike Asia, Africa, the Middle East, or southern American countries, where numbers of families have no running water or their washing machine is nearby running streams. Relative poverty, another type, is defined when individuals compare their family economic status to others in the neighborhood. Children, families in relative poverty may have a car, air conditioning, two colored TVs with cable or satellite reception, refrigerator, stove, clothes washer and dryer, and microwave. Many students in America feel they live in relative poverty because they compare their living condition with others, even ones portrayed in television. However, this kind of poverty does not necessarily imply that children is lacking anything in particular. Oftentimes, these children feel they are owed something. Unfortunately, research suggests relative poverty can cause just as much stress on the body as absolute poverty. Notice the kind of amenities and percentages of such that families have. Situational poverty is another kind of poverty. This kind is usually of a shorter duration and typically the result of circumstances such as a national disaster, family death, illness, divorce, or job loss. Situational poverty is disastrous, although sometimes a temporary condition. For example, massive flooding or hurricane damage can destroy every piece of personal property in a day. A lower or middle income mother can go from having enough to poverty in a matter of days after a divorce. Job losses, financial pressure, difficult times don't just affect adults, they affect kids as well. Generational poverty exhibits qualities of other kinds, such as children lacking nourishment and having to live in temporary housing. But this type of poverty refers to ongoing poverty that is passed down from parent to child for at least 2 generations. This kind is most difficult to break the cycle. Regardless of the kind of poverty, it hurts. Poor children grow up hearing fewer words, are more likely to be hungry, less likely to graduate from high school, and are at greater risk of being unemployed than non-poor counterparts. To better understand students in poverty, Dr. Payne, an expert in the field, explains in her book that poverty is the extent to which an individual does without resources. These resources are financial, having the money to purchase goods and services. Interestingly, Payne claims that this ability to leave poverty is more dependent upon other resources than it is upon financial resources. Emotional, being able to choose and control emotional responses, particularly to negative situations, without engaging in self-destructive behavior. This is an internal resource and shows itself through stamina, perseverance, and choices. Emotional resources are the most important of all resources because, when present, they allow the individual not to return to old habit patterns. Emotional resources come, at least in part, from role models. Mental, having the mental abilities and acquired skills such as reading, writing, computing to deal with daily life. Spiritual, believing in divine purpose and guidance. This is a powerful resource because poor individuals do not see himself or herself as having hope, but rather as capable of not having worth or value. Physical, having physical health and mobility. Support systems, having friends, family, and backup resources available to access in times of need. These are external resources. Relationships or role models, having frequent access to adults who are appropriate, who are nurturing to the child, and who do not engage in self-destructive behavior. This is particularly where the teacher comes into play. Payne explains that educators should know the unspoken cues and habits of the poor. With this, Dr. Payne acknowledges that each socioeconomic class has hidden rules in which individuals live. These hidden rules affect patterns of thought, social interaction, and cognitive strategies. Schools and businesses operate from middle-class norms and use the middle-class hidden rules. The criteria in which most decisions are made in middle class relate to work and achievement. In wealth, the ramifications between financial, social, and political connections have weight. For those children from poverty, these families' life decisions focus on survival, relationships, and entertainment. The prevailing attitude in generational poverty is that society owes them a living. Therefore, a job serves to make enough money just to survive, not a career and an advancement as in the middle class. Food is sustenance and valued for quantity, not quality. Since academic learning is abstract, it is generally not prized by poor people nor discussed. On the other hand, people and relationships are topics that are of importance. When simply surviving, you only have people upon whom you can rely. Therefore, the poor value relationships over possessions. Mom has the most powerful position if she functions as the caretaker, and often there are favorite others. Entertainment becomes important to relieve the daily pressures from survival. The ability to tell stories and have a sense of humor is highly valued. Humor is almost always about people, either situations that people encounter or things people do to other people. For many poor, people are possessions, and they exhibit possessiveness toward people they really like. A good woman is expected to take care of and rescue her man and her children as needed, while a man is expected to work hard physically, be a lover and fighter. Since people are possessions, there is a fear that with too much education, the individual might leave and move on. Most often because poor people lack a strong vocabulary, words are not respected as conflict is resolved through physical fighting. When angry, they are not emotionally reserved. As such, nonverbal communication such as touch is used to communicate, as are space and nonverbal emotional information. Language is about survival, so casual register used for all verbal exchanges, incomplete sentences are common. A 400 to 800 word vocabulary with general non-specific words characterize conversations between friends. When emotional, they usually say exactly what is on their mind. The poor live in the moment. Time only occurs in the present. The future does not exist except as a word. Poor people react to what happens at the time, and often actions are based on emotions. If they don't like the boss or teacher, they will quit. The emphasis is on the current feeling, not long-term ramifications. Future implications of present actions are seldom considered. Thus, setting goals, being proactive, and planning doesn't enter their minds. Destiny and fate are cornerstones of the poor's belief system. What is destined to happen is what will happen, so the notion of having choices is foreign. Options are hardly ever examined. Everything is polarized. It is one way or the other, and there is an orientation toward failure. Punishment is about penance and forgiveness, not change. Poor students often laugh when disciplined to save face, as opposed to the middle-class children who take reprimands seriously without smiling, but have some deference to authority. As Payne notes, in rigor plus relevance plus relationships, it's equaling higher achievement. According to Payne, teachers must realize that the primary motivations for a poor student's success will be in relationships. Successful relationships with students and their families occur when emotional deposits are made and emotional withdrawals are avoided. By understanding these deposits valued by individuals from poverty, relationships grow stronger. The teacher should begin to immediately build positive emotional relationships by being kind, courteous, and respectful, as well as the other deposits you see on the slide. Teachers should avoid the pitfalls of the emotional withdrawals seen on the slide. If a teacher has enough passion and experience to build positive relationships with students and their families, that teacher may then become a support system. These support systems fall into general categories like providing the student and families coping strategies to help them deal with daily disappointments and tragedies, as well as, interestingly enough, triumphants. Being a sounding board to students and families and offering suggestions for options they haven't considered during problem solving. Using positive self-talk. Relationships and education are two factors that help individuals put poverty behind them. A teacher, counselor, or coach who take an interest in poor children and their families as individuals will be supportive. This concludes the presentation on understanding poverty.